Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial video we're going to be drawing or painting this lovely blue butterfly. So I have drawn or painted this using watercolour pencils, and I've used the Albrecht Durer Watercolour pencils for this particular drawing, but you can use whatever you want. You can also use ordinary coloured pencils, so your polychromos or whatever you have, and you also grab a solvent to do the blending to get similar results. You can also follow this and do blending with a white pencil or burnishing or however you like, but for best results you're going to want to grab yourself some coloured pencils, solvent, or those watercolour pencils. So to start off, I've just drawn my outline with a 2B pencil on my Fabriano Artistico paper. I will leave a link below to how I've actually drawn this out. I've used the grid method and a reference image from Pixabay. So I'll leave the link to the reference image and the video explaining exactly how I use the grid method to get accurate outlines. I'll leave both those in the description for you guys. So what I started off with first for this is just by adding down some light layers of some blue colours. So I started off with a lighter blue, and then I've gone in and used some darker blues and a few purples in some of the darker shadowy areas of the butterfly wings. And when I'm adding down the watercolour pencils onto the paper, I'm just using a light pressure. You don't want to go in really hard because otherwise you're going to get like a really intense saturation of colour. So I'm just using a light pressure because then I can go in and activate with water and then build like I would with coloured pencils and a solvent. So when you activate watercolour pencils with the water, you tend to get a much more saturated colour. So just going in lightly is going to help you not to get like too much of that saturated colour all at the beginning, because once you've activated these with water, it's incredibly difficult to lighten. You can go over with a white pencil or something like that, but once you've activated with water and you've got that underneath, that is pretty much going to stay there. So go in with some light layers. Add in your lighter tones in your lighter areas. You can even leave some patches of white if you have some really light areas, and then you can just kind of bleed the paint or the coloured pencil over into those lighter areas so you get a really nice kind of light wash effect. And then you want to layer up your darker colours in your shadow areas. So you can see down the centre of the butterfly where the two wings meet, I've kind of added in this really kind of dark area. That's where you've got a lot of shadow, and also underneath the top of the wings as well. So you've got the top half of the wings and the bottom half. So where those two areas meet, I've added in quite a bit of darker colour, and also where the wings kind of almost like go into like a valley towards the body of the butterfly. That's where the wings tend to be a little bit darker as well, and they get a lot lighter as you come towards the outer edges, kind of where the wings are lifting up and then more towards the light source. So that's where you've got the lighter area. So I've kept those ends of the butterfly wings quite light, and then more towards the body I've kept quite dark. So one thing I love about working with watercolour pencils is that it's so easy to create a piece. You just layer down your coloured pencil or your watercolour pencil, and then you just go in and activate with water, and it's so intense, the change. It's really magical to watch, and I just love watching this magic happen, especially in like a faster speed like this. So you can see that I started off with the lighter areas, just kind of added some water to those. Then I've used the water in the darker areas. So you want to make sure that you work from your lighter to your darker areas, because if you pull from your darker to your lighter areas, you're going to lose that kind of really nice light effect. You're going to dampen down that lightness that you've already added in those lighter areas. So make sure that you always work from your lighter areas to your darker areas when you're adding your water or a solvent, if that's what you happen to be using. So as you can see, as I have added down the water, it kind of makes the area look really kind of rough, and you do have this really interesting watercolour effect. That's not the look I was going for here. That might be a look that you like, and if that's the case, then by all means keep that on your piece. But for me, I wanted it to kind of look like it was coloured pencil, but more of like a painterly coloured pencil look like you get when you're blending with a solvent. So I like to go in with a couple more layers, and I obviously am going to go in with more layers because I need a much more intense saturation of colour. We need to develop some really dark blues, and we need to develop those shadows in the wings a little bit more as well. So you want to wait for your watercolour pencils to completely dry before going in with a second layer. I believe I waited 1 or 2 days for my piece to completely dry before going in again. And then I'm just doing exactly the same method. I'm using a really light hand. So I'm using a shading motion just to add down the pencil onto the paper, making sure I'm using a really, really light hand. That's really important, and making sure that I'm working in the direction of the wings as well. So I'm not kind of going in crazy directions, but I'm not necessarily like making really defined strokes. I'm keeping everything really nice and soft by using the side of the pencil and by adding in some smooth shaded lines. To create the veins down the wings, as you can see, they're really nice and dark in comparison to the kind of luminescent effect of the wings. I just went in with, I think it was a dark indigo pencil, and just applied a little bit of pressure so that it had a little bit more of an intense colour there, and yeah, it really made those veins pop out there. I think towards the end we go through and add a little bit of a white pencil to really distinguish those lines a little bit more, but for now we're just going to make sure that we can see them and that they're there by going in with a few of the darker colours and a little bit of a heavier pressure. So this is kind of the only time that you will want to use a heavy pressure, and if you have some really, really heavy set shadows as well, that's when you want to go in and use a little bit more pressure, because when you go in and activate with water, you're going to get a lot more of an intense colour by adding a lot more of that pigment from the pencil down. In the darker area of the wings here, they're not just made by using dark indigo and adding in some dark sepia or even black. I've actually added in quite a bit of light red violet, some blue violet, lots of those kind of pink tones as well, to really make sure there's a lot of depth in the shadow and those darker parts of the wings. Obviously you want to make sure that there's like a lot of blue tones or similar tones to the colour of the wings, but also adding in some complementing colours is going to help create that kind of really luminescent, kind of iridescent effect as well. One thing I really love about using these Albrecht Durer watercolour pencils is the fact that you can add down your pencil, then you can activate it with water, and then you can go in with the white and it acts as an incredible highlight. So you don't have to worry too much about preserving lighter areas, because you can just go straight in with that white pencil and it's like bam, it's really opaque, it's really white, and it also works as a good blender as well. So I'm actually using the white coloured pencil and one of the lighter blue pencils to just increase the kind of highlighted area of these wings, and just to help blend the pencil all together as well. So for this piece I just blended twice with the water, so I've added 2 light layers of the watercolour pencils and blended. So one light layer, blend with the water, wait for it to dry, add another layer, blend with water, wait for it to dry, and this is the final layer that we're adding on now, and you can see just how different the piece looks on the left compared to the right. So the left looks really nice and smooth, kind of got this really nice fluffy, almost powdery effect of the butterfly wings, which is perfect, and that's created just by layering, just by using a really nice soft shading motion and really blending the colours together as well. So on this last layer I am actually increasing the pressure a little bit more on the pencils, and that's because I'm not going to go through and activate too much with water again, so I can increase the saturation of the colour with the coloured pencils or the watercolour pencils themselves. But by adding this final layer on, we're just going to smooth out any kind of watercolour patches. So often when you add water and activate these pencils, it kind of does leave it looking a little bit patchy, which again is fine if you want to go for that kind of look. If you want it to look like you've used watercolour pencils or watercolours themselves, that's completely fine. But for me, I just wanted it to look like it was a coloured pencil piece, so I just want to make sure that everything is really nice and smooth, and I've got all of those lovely colours blended out, and there's none of those kind of watery effects on there, even though I have used watercolour pencils. So as I said a little while ago, I've used the white pencil around the veins of the wings just to kind of try and highlight them and make it look as if they are protruding a little bit from the wings. So you've got that really, really dark vein. I think I used the dark indigo mixed with a little bit of dark sepia, and then I've used the white pencil directly next to it so that you've got that direct contrast of the highlight and then the darker vein area, and it just makes it look like they're protruding from the wings a little bit more, and it's just casting a little bit of shadow. So I'm adding the white pencil to the top of the vein, so the light source for this is kind of coming from the top of the paper, not from the top of the butterfly. So I'm adding the highlight on the top side of the vein, and that just makes it look as if there's a little bit of shadow cast on the bottom half, and it makes it again look a little bit more three-dimensional, as if it's popping out of the wings a little bit. So all in all, there's not too much technique involved when you're using a watercolour pencil. You just need to remember that when you are adding your initial colours down, you want to go in with a light hand and activate with water, because those colours are going to really become nice and saturated. They're going to become so vibrant. Wait for that to dry and then go in and increase the saturation by again adding another light layer and then activating with water to see kind of where you're at, and then you can go in and smooth everything out if you need to. Watercolour pencils are a really versatile medium to use, and I really enjoy using them alongside coloured pencils. So I could have added in some details and everything with my polychromos pencils, but I decided to continue and add in the details and everything with the actual Albrecht Durer watercolour pencils themselves, and I'm really pleased that I did, because this is an incredible piece. It was so easy to do, and I really love the outcome of it. And I hope that I have given you guys some useful tips when using your watercolour pencils as well, and creating your own butterfly or whatever it is that you want to create. You can use the same tips from this video to create any type of wildlife. Just remember to keep those layers light, blend with your water, and then resaturate those colours again. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial video. If you do want to follow along with this particular one and a whole bunch of more in real time, then make sure you pop on over to my Patreon and to my website, where you can find a ton of different real-time wildlife tutorials, as well as technique videos and tips on how to use your coloured pencils for blending, for layering, and for colour mixing. All of that kind of stuff you will find over on those two channels. I'll leave the link in the description below for you guys. But anyway, I will see you guys next week. Bye!